And to introduce tonight's featured speaker is a person who truly needs no introduction in Fairfield. It's Francis Tickey. He serves on the National Organic Standards Board and is the co-owner with his wife, Susan, of Radiance Dairy, which provides many of us in Fairfield with our daily nourishment of grass-based organic milk and dairy products. So,
it's my privilege to be able to introduce tonight's keynote speaker. I've known Alan Guebert for a number of years, and even before I knew him, I knew about his writing. He has this column in a lot of farm magazines, and I've been enjoying it for many years. I keep wondering how he gets away with writing the things he does. Maybe you can tell us that. So first, a little background on Alan. He was raised on a 720-acre, 100-cow dairy in southern Illinois, and that was back in the 70s when the 100-cow dairy was a huge dairy farm. 60s too, okay. So, but nowadays, of course, a big dairy farm is 5, 10,000, 20,000 cows in a CAFO. But that's where Alan gets his work ethic. Milking cows twice a day, 8 days a week, right, Alan? So he graduated from the University of Illinois in 1980, and then he worked for a decade in a number of farm magazines, including Professional Farmers of America, Successful Farming Magazine, and Farm Journal. Then in 1993, he founded his own column called, a weekly column on ag policy and ag politics. And he calls it the Farm and Food File. Today it's published in 60 newspapers in 26 states and 2 Canadian provinces. And Alan has won every major, every major award in ag journalism, and his peers long ago recognized him as master writer. And he has a book out, which you can buy out here tonight if you wish. It's called The Land of Milk and Uncle Honey. It's a collection of 50 of his weekly columns. And it's about what he says about people, work, and food, and what he calls the Southern Illinois Dairy Farm of my youth. The book is co-authored by his daughter, Mary Grace Foxwell, and has been described as a lyrical, almost poetic ride through the lives of a family farm where hard work, plenty of laughs, and great food was on the menu every day. And so you can get a copy tonight if you wish, get it signed by Alan. So Alan's wit and wisdom comes out in his weekly column. I'm sure we're going to hear some of it tonight. But he has the ability to tell the apologists for industrial agriculture where to go, and they look forward to the trip. Join me in welcoming Alan.
I always like shaking hands with the dairymen. They're so soft. And I don't know who is waving down here. You wave at me because I was raised in the country. I'm going to wave back. I did write my speech tonight. I usually don't. But I did tonight because I want to express exactly how I feel. And if you don't write things down, you tend to get carried away. And I'm getting too old to get carried away. The only thing I carry away anymore is a case of beer. But I first want to thank you for inviting me here to Fairfield tonight to address and hopefully inform and perhaps even inspire you and your heartfelt efforts to ensure your rural community remains both rural and a community. Not a one-sided legacy hollowed out by industrial ag. And I'm gonna veer away right away off this beautiful script. I drove over here today. I live in Illinois, and just south of Peoria. And I know most people that hear Illinois, they think crooked politicians, right? So do I. But here's the thing about Illinois. We put our governors in jail. to tell you what you do with the one you've had in the last 40 years. But I drove the back roads. When I lived in Des Moines, the speed limit was 55 on the interstate. And we had tractors do almost that. And so my wife, the lovely Catherine, and I, and our son Paul, who was 2 years old at the time, he's 38 now, we would take the back roads, 116 from Peoria, then across, all the way up to 34, then through Fairfield and Potomac, and the back way Pella, on Sunday afternoons. Because you could drive 65 on the state limits. Well, I drove that today, and I hadn't driven it 20 years. And I don't have to tell you that I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. I saw a few combines, hardly any people, and zero livestock. And I thought, my God, what have we done? And how fast that happened. But now I get back on the highway. But I really only have two things that I hope to offer you in the brief time here tonight. First, I want to talk about agriculture's bigness and its increasing number of signs that I see of it cracking and failing. And second, we need to talk a bit about community and what community means in today's agriculture and tomorrow's rural America. So let's just go to the bigness first. I think strength, be it physical or economic, ain't what it's cracked up to be. In fact, it never really was. And if you're for proof, just go ask Goliath, right? I mean, he was a champion of the Philistines in the Bible, if you remember your Bible. And boy, I do. I had 8 years of Lutheran school. A lot of spankings in between. Better yet, go ask shepherd boy David, who with the fervent backing of his friends and neighbors, his community, picked up a couple of rocks and went forth. Now, I think what would have happened that day if we used the modern terms to explain those events that we all are very familiar with, if we use those modern terms instead of the elegant language of the King James Version. For instance, did David have any reasonable expectation of success? Don't think so. What was the cost-benefit analysis of this corporate and personal challenge have suggested David do? I mean, shepherd boy, giant, slingshot, giant, really small rock, still a giant. Well, lucky for us, and lucky for history, David didn't have to listen to the naysayers or the consultants about the algorithm of his success. He simply listened to his heart. And he did what was right. I think Big Ag is doing today what it knows is wrong. And it knows it's wrong because most of the big farm groups like the American Farm Bureau, American Soybean Association, Big Milk, Big Corn, Big Pig, Big Beef, all of them know they're in trouble with the eating public, don't they? And the proof is simple to see. It's how hard they're fighting you. And in fact, they're fighting the very customers they need. That fight, it reminds me of these three good old boys from Texas who, at least in their own mind, they're the greatest fishermen in the Lone Star State. They'd fished every lake, every pond, every creek, every river, every water trough, every ocean, and they caught fish. They were the best. They were so good, in fact, they got bored. So they decided one winter they were going to go for a challenge. They were going to go up in the dead of winter to North Dakota and catch walleye in the Missouri River. And off they went. But the big adventure didn't start very well. When they got skunked the first day, when that was hard to take. And they got skunked the second day. And oh Lord, the third day, they weren't any fish again. So on the fourth and last day, North Dakota, they went back to the Missouri, and they threw everything in their tackle box at them doggone walleye. They threw stick bait, dry flies, wet flies, minnows, worms, stink bait, everything. And nada. Zilch. Zero. Nothing. Not even a bump, let alone a bite. And just as they were packing up to head back to Texas, in shame, they look across the Missouri River and they see some old Native American pulling in walleye after walleye after walleye. And they just couldn't take it. They finally forced the weakest of the three across the ice, and you go over there and you find out what that guy's doing. So the guy went over across the ice, and his buddies stayed on their side, and they could see him doing this, doing all that, no, and then, and then all of a sudden he stopped. He put his hands up. He walked back across the ice. His friends, two friends on the other side said, golly, what you talking about? What's that guy's secret over there? And the guy said, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. That guy over there, he drilled a hole in the ice. Now that reminds me, that makes me think Big Ag is like those fishermen. They really know a lot about a lot of things, like financial leverage, feed conversion, the point of diminishing returns, lobbying, exporting, asset management. But they're more interested in catching fish, making more and more hogs, more corn, more money, more exports, more influence, more and more and more of more, that they forget, or they look past, or they don't care about you. It's your lakes, or your rivers, or your air, or your communities, or your culture. We forget that agriculture is a compound word. Food and culture. And culture is the biggest part of farming. I often said years ago that most people were jealous of farm boys like Francis and me, and they didn't know why. They said, boy, you just raised on that farm. It was real good living. I know, it was real good. But you know why it was real good? The food. The food. That fresh milk every day. You know, butchered hogs, butchered cow, Holstein. Poor unfortunate one. As my dad would say, that's the one who put more on her back than in the bucket. They were jealous of us because of the food. And they're still jealous of us because of the food. Each of these farm groups spends thousands and thousands of dollars every day, millions of dollars a year, mostly given them through mandatory checkoffs, but that's another speech, to fight for the very things you are fighting against. They fight for consolidation. They fight for dirty water. They fight for despoiled land. They fight for industrial food production. They fight for hollowed out towns, and they fight for empty communities. And I'm going to take another off-ramp here, because in listening to the presentations earlier, and remind me never to follow John Eichert, okay? I followed Earl Butz one time, and the only thing worse than following Earl Butz is having Earl Butz follow you. Because you're dead. He can't stand you. Or me. But Earl's dead now, so. Good. Don't tell my mother. And this isn't an original thought, but it's the best explanation I've heard of what's going on today in our general economy, but what's been going on for the best 20 years in the ag economy. And that is, we hear over and over and over again about jobs and about jobs and about jobs. You know, anytime the CAFO wants to move in, well, it's jobs. Anytime anybody wants to build an ethanol plant, well, it's jobs. It isn't really jobs. There's not that many jobs there. But they build that argument of jobs, 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 because it's a part of a bigger argument. And that bigger argument they make is called economic freedom. We need economic freedom. And that's the argument that our friends from Wichita, the Koch brothers, make. Economic freedom. You know, if we just had more freedom in economics, we'd have more jobs, we'd have a better economy, we'd have lower taxes, we would have, you know, I guess we'd all be eating ice cream. But you know, part of that argument is the way you get more freedom, man, you gotta do away with more rules. You know, you gotta get rid of those rules. Those rules are just so complicated, so complex, they tie your hands, and you don't have freedom. It's the same argument the gun lobby makes. You know, freedom. And you know what really, you know why those rules are in place in the first place? Because people put them there, didn't they? Mm-hmm. And those people put them there because they were voters. And those voters voted in favor of those rules. So you really want to get rid of those rules? Get rid of those voters. And what's going on right now? That's where we are, folks. That's where we are. This is all part of the same argument we've heard on the farm for 20 years. It's a lie. It doesn't work that way. And when I look at these big capos up and down the road, all I see are asset managers. I don't see farmers. What farmer would do what they're doing? You know, and they say, well, we're doing it for jobs, we're doing it for our kids, and this is a good way for my boy to get back on the farm. Yeah, $1 million worth of debt right out of college. That's a good idea. You know, there's an old saying down in southern Illinois. It says, I didn't leave you all the money in the world, son, but what I left you instead was the world. And you know why it's a truism? It's true. Funny how that works out. So, how do we look at all these groups and the thousands of dollars, and how do you fight them? Well, you call their bluff. They never say what they're really there to do. But you know, we know what they're there to do. They say big is better, and then you hear this ceaseless chant. And I heard it in Iowa when I lived in Iowa as a foreigner because from Illinois. Des Moines Register let me know that every day. Paper that Iowans read. What's the chant? We feed the world. We feed the world. Right. No, you don't. You don't. It's just that simple. They don't. And they could prove it any number of ways, of course. I wrote a column a year ago that highlighted new work from the Environmental Working Group. And it was really fascinating stuff. And what it said was, you know, Big Ag talks about exports, and that's where the game is, you know. It showed, the Environmental Working Group research showed that less than 3% of all the grain shipped out of America goes to the 100 most malnourished countries in the world. That's where they need to be fed. We're sending 3% of all our exports to all those nations combined. And of course, not coincidentally, we send 90% of our vast food exports to the best fed 17 nations in the world. On the face of it, that makes perfect sense. As a nation, we sell food to people with money. And conversely, if you have empty purses, we send you down the road empty-handed. There's more proof of this coldly financial approach arrived in the news just the other week. The House passed U.S. House passed its budget resolution, which is really just a placebo or a bottle of ketchup to get the tax cut through, of course. We know that. But, so nobody read the bill. Oh, baby, you should have. Because right now, our nation, since about 2014, has spent $2.14 billion per year on food aid overseas. $2.14 billion. And I emphasize that because the House bill proposes to eliminate $1 billion of that in the Food for Peace program, which was started way back in the 50s. But we're going to eliminate that because we don't want to feed hungry people who might be our enemies, do we? We want to stay America first, we want to stay and keep the food here. Not that we're running out of food, but we just don't want to give it to people. Well, we just don't want to give it. And it also includes a $200 million cut from the McGovern Dole Child Nutrition Program. That's for food, send food overseas. We don't want to do that either. So that's $1.2 billion out of the $2.1 billion. That's in the House budget. When asked why you would cut food aid, the answer from the Trump White House was, on both cuts, well, we got to cut someplace. This is how easy it is, folks. This is how easy it is to legislate. Just got to cut someplace. And if nobody rises up, then it'll sail through the Senate too. Evidently, the Senate and House Ag Committee is going to work on that. I wouldn't be so sure about it, though. Why these cuts now? They can do it. They can do it. They're in charge, and you're not. And, you know, it's like that governor of Massachusetts long ago. He's campaigning hard around the state, all day long. Campaigned for re-election. Boy, he had a tough election. He went to 8 or 9 different towns, kissing babies, shaking hands, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he was exhausted, thirsty, and hungry as a grizzly bear. And lucky for him, his next stop was a church picnic. So he gets in line with everybody else, goes through the line, gets to the fried chicken. Lady, big fork, puts a piece of fried chicken on his plate, and says, move on. He turns around and goes, man, he says, I haven't eaten all day. I'm really hungry. Could I have 2 pieces? And she said, no, if I give you 2 pieces, somebody back there won't get a piece. 1 piece is fair, that's for everybody, so please move on. Oh man, he says, I'm really hungry. Do you know who I am, man? I'm the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The lady looked at him and said, do you know who I am? I'm the lady with the chicken. Move on, jackass. Doesn't that sound like somebody we all know? That's Big Ag in a nutshell. They always want special treatment for who they are, not what they do. In fact, they'd be perfectly happy if no one ever knew what it is they do. Look, if American agriculture truly fed the world, there would be no hungry people in America, right? But we know there's, every night, 60 to 80 million people in America don't have enough food. I ask you walk into any grocery store, anywhere, in any state in America, what are you going to find? Food. It ain't like we don't have it. You know, hunger isn't a function of production. It's a function of poverty. You know that, I know that, everybody knows that, but everybody just can't say that. You know, I think of grocery stores. I go into grocery stores, I think of them as the 2 hired men we used to have on our farm. Every grocery store shelf's fully loaded. Shelves groaning under the weight. How can we have millions and millions of hungry people? We have food coming out of our ears because, of course, of poverty. There will always be hunger in America as long as there's poverty. It's got nothing to do with food. And that's not heresy, that's reality. It's not complicated, it's simple. The whole feed the world belief puts me in mind of another story. A little town down deep in southern Illinois in the Bible Belt that held only 2 noticeable features. One was a huge evangelical church, and the other was a small but very successful tavern. Well, as you might imagine, the church was powerfully unhappy about a whiskey-selling, jukebox-owning, pool-playing den of hell-raising iniquity right in the center of their otherwise righteous little town, and they set out to do something about it. One week, the church spread the word that it would hold a prayer service that if enough people attended, and those who attended arrived with spiritual determination, they would pray that tavern right off the face of the earth. And don't you know, that's just what happened. Hundreds upon hundreds of people prayed that tavern would be destroyed, and don't you know, that night, powerful lightning storm rose up, and, oh yeah, lightning hit that tavern, and it burned to the ground before one person could lift one finger or one bucket to save it. A week later, however, the tavern owner filed suit against the church for the loss of his business. He claimed the church, and only the church, prayed for his destruction. To the church's awful surprise, the local judge ordered a bench trial and listened to witness after witness confess that they had indeed prayed for the church's demise. Before the tavern keeper could even take the stand to present his side of the case, the judge issued a summary judgment that was one sentence long. And the sentence read in its entirety, "In light of the testimony presented before this court, it is clear to me and the Lord Almighty himself that there's only one person in this courtroom today who believes in the power of prayer." That's where we are with Big Ag right now. They're praying. They're praying. They're hoping they'll just fold your hand and walk away. They huff and they puff and they bluff in Des Moines and in Dubuque and here in Fairfield or in Springfield, my home state, or in Washington, because they can't be honest with you. They can't. And they can't be honest with you because you know that no one can put 5,000 cows or 50,000 sows on a postage stamp and expect anything good to come from it. This is where community comes in. As I said earlier, I wanted to talk about community because very, very few in American agriculture talk about it today at all. They'd like you to forget about it. Instead, they want to talk about the price of corn, they want to talk about trade deals, even if that whole talk boils down to rubbish like free trade's good. And we repeat endlessly and mindlessly the catchphrases that aren't just false, they're patently false. Like, GMOs are needed to feed the future billions. Well, GMOs, love them or hate them, aren't needed to feed the future billions. In fact, we're producing enough food right now to feed everyone, as we well know. How do we know this? Because we can add. There's even a more obvious reason. And we know this too. 30 to 40% of all the food grown in America is thrown out. Years ago, I was in India, and I was shocked to learn that enough food spoils in India, not like they don't need food in India, because of no refrigeration and bad roads. How much food? Fruit and vegetables. Fruit and vegetables, enough fruit and vegetables rot each and every year in India, the equivalent of all the fruits and vegetables raised in Australia. Think about that. Massive amounts. Massive amounts. And, you know, just one more note about GMOs, and feel free to use this, and feel free to say, well, that goofball from Illinois told you this, and that'll make it all right with everybody. More than 95% of all the corn acres planted in the U.S. this year were GM. And we're told they're needed to feed the world. Well, if that's true, why is 43% of all this year's 15 billion bushel crop going to ethanol? Do I need to tell people in Iowa that ethanol is fuel, not food? I don't think so. You know that, right? If you put 100% of all GMO corn grown in America every year into ethanol, you'd still have enough corn and enough food to feed America. That's irrefutable. Irrefutable. We started the ethanol program. I'm not a big fan of ethanol, maybe you can tell. Because I don't understand why you want to plow hillsides that are too steep to plant corn that's too cheap, that grow a crop too big, they have to give away to too many people. They add up, I'm not really good at math, but you had two and two and two and two, and you got too much. And you shouldn't be doing that. It's irrefutable, but all of this feed the world is all a false narrative. It's all what they want you to buy. They want the public, the unsuspecting, or the consuming public. I hate the word consumer. I think there needs to be a large discussion in agriculture about the words we use. Because it's their words. It's not yours. And their words, and they're good at it. They spend millions of dollars putting farmers through training, social media training, or media training. Well, I'm in the media, and I don't even think I'm housebroken. But it's all to convince you that they're doing it right. When you know in your heart they're not doing it right. They know in their heart they're not doing it right. That's why they need to be trained, like you do your dog. Words, not just to me, because I'm a writer, but words are really, really important. We use words all the time, we don't even think about it. Another phrase that drives me crazy is human resources. Humans are not resources! They're humans. Coal is a resource, okay? Unemployed, employed, rural, industrial, Republican, Democrat, alive or dead. We need to pick our vocabulary and use it wisely. Let me read you something I came across last year that tackles the very language we all use when we talk about today's communities, and how that uncareful language, that uncaring clinical language, leads us away from community. Here's the quote, word for word. To know clearly what industrialization is or means, we need to consider some language. First, we speak of a region whose economy is dependent upon jobs. This word, as we now use it in political cliches such as job creation, entirely disassociates the idea of work from any of the ideas of calling or vocation or a vocational choice. A job exists without reference to anybody in particular or any place in particular. If a person loses their job in eastern Kentucky and finds a job in Alabama, well, they cease to be what? Unemployed. Or have to become employed. It does not matter who the person is or what the job is. Employment and job completely satisfies the social aim of the industrial economy and the industrial government. Who you reckon wrote that? Karl Marx? Friedrich Hegel? Bernie Sanders? No, it was written by one of the kindest, gentlest men if you ever have occasion to meet. Wendell Berry. And it was part of an essay he wrote called Local Economies to Save the Land and the People. In the essay, he argues that not only do local communities have a desire and talent to build their own communities, many already are. 20 years ago, and they're doing it with local food. 20 years ago, you can believe this or not, this is a fact. There are less than 100 farmers markets in America. Today, there's almost 10,000. Yeah. 20 years ago, and in certain parts of the South, CSA stood for what? Well, we know what it stands for now, doesn't it? Who would have predicted this? Well, you could have. Indeed, we all could have if we remember that agriculture is always changing. Indeed, one certain constant in agriculture is change. Golly, 25 years ago, there was no such thing as GMOs. 50 years ago, there's a new thing called anhydrous ammonia. And 75 years ago, we were on the cusp of a brand new technology called hybrid seed corn. And judging from some of the gray hair in this room, some of us can well remember relatives who 100 years ago farmed with the highest technology of that day. Horses. The point is, of course, that agriculture, change is the coin of the realm. Every generation has brought change. And not small change, massive change. Revolutionary change. Change always. So what's next?
Change.
Change. Massive change. Revolutionary change. So the only question now is, who will be the next generation's change makers? I think you and I both know it won't be John Deere, or it won't be the big meat packers. Pretty sure it's not going to be Monsanto, and it won't be Kraft. Even more obvious, it won't be Congress, it won't be the Farm Bureau, it won't be the hired hands of yours in your state house, or DNR, or the CAFO down the road. It will be some individual, it will be some group that's working right now to invent tomorrow. Is that you? Is that your group? Are you the revolutionaries of tomorrow? You don't look like it. Of course you are. Of course you are those revolutionaries. You know why? You're here. You're here. You show up. If people showed up, probably wouldn't have to be here. Think about that. I have just one final note to add, and I would be remiss if I came here as a Missouri Synod Lutheran just 12 days before the 500th anniversary of Martin Luther, that fat little well-read German monk, nailed 95 theses on the church door in Wittenberg. Just think about that. One guy with one hammer and one nail built the world. Tore down certain parts of it. Luther, you remember, did not set out to be a revolutionary. His only goal was to reform the church he deeply loved. He fought for that reformation in print, and he fought for it in the pulpit with all the intellectual and physical force he had for years. And his reward, that beloved church gave him the choice that he either recant and get back in line, or he'll be burned at the stake. Remember what Luther said? He said he couldn't, because, quote, "Here I stand, for I can do no other." Think of the courage it took to say that. Think of the courage it took to think that. Well, what do you believe? What do you think? Well, say it. Live it. Be it. You'll change the world. Thank you.